My name's Liam. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've had a complicated relationship with my family. To strangers, we probably looked normal enough. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, the occasional barbecue in the backyard. But underneath, there's always been this undercurrent of entitlement, like my successes were never fully mine, and anything good that happened to me was simply luck that I owed them for. It's the kind of family dynamic where accomplishments are less celebrated and more tallied, as though everyone is constantly calculating who deserves what slice of the pie. I grew up the oldest of three. My younger sister, Sophia, has a knack for dramatics and playing the victim, and my brother, Ethan, is the type who can charm his way through most situations, though responsibility never quite seems to stick to him. My mom and dad, well, let's just say they've always had a way of guilt-tripping me with phrases like, family comes first, which usually translates into, Liam will take care of it. As I got older and started doing better for myself, I noticed how quickly that phrase came up whenever bills, favors, or inconvenient tasks were on the table. Over the past 5 years, I've worked hard to build a career. I'm not rich by any means, but I've been smart with my choices, climbed the ladder at my company, and finally got to a place where I can afford things like a nice apartment and the occasional vacation of my own. It felt like I was just starting to enjoy the fruits of my labor until my family decided that my success meant it was time for them to cash in. It started casually. A couple of years ago, my mom asked if I could spot her for some bills. Then, Sophia needed help covering her rent for a month. Ethan forgot to make a car payment and asked if I could help him out, promising to pay me back. Spoiler, he didn't. At first, I chalked it up to normal family give and take, but soon, it stopped being requests and turned into expectations. If someone was short on money, the unspoken rule became that Liam would fix it. If there was a dinner out, eyes turned to me when the check arrived. Little by little, they began treating me less like a family member and more like a personal safety net. The breaking point came last spring when they invited me over for a family talk. I thought maybe it was about Dad's health or something important, but when I sat down in the living room, I quickly realized it was anything but. My mom cleared her throat and said, Liam, we've been talking, and we think it's time you step up a bit more for the family. I raised an eyebrow, already wary. Then Sophia chimed in with a smirk. Yeah, since you're doing so well now, we figured you'd cover our family vacation this year. Flights, hotels, meals, the whole thing. I laughed at first, thinking they had to be joking, but then I saw the way they were looking at me. Dead serious, almost smug. My dad leaned back in his chair and added, It's only fair. You're the one who's benefited the most, and family should share the load. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, consider it your duty to the family. We deserve this after all the years we supported you. Supported me? Sophia rolled her eyes and replied, Of course we are. You're making good money now. Don't act like this is some huge burden. It's just one vacation. Mom chimed in. You'll feel good about it once it's done. Think of it as giving back. The laughter that followed quiet, knowing, as if they'd cornered me into agreeing echoed in my head. I sat there, silent, my mind racing. Anger boiled in my chest, but I swallowed it down, masking it with a neutral expression. If there's one thing I've learned about my family, it's that they underestimate me when I'm quiet. And in that moment, I knew one thing. If they thought they could guilt me into funding their little getaway, they were in for a shock. That was the night everything started to change. In the days that followed that living room ambush, the atmosphere around my family shifted. It wasn't subtle, either. They treated my silence that night as a tacit agreement. Within a week, Sophia was sending me links to beachfront resorts, attaching little notes like, This one has a spa I've been dying to try. Make sure to book ocean view rooms. Ethan, never one to miss a chance, texted me pictures of first-class plane tickets, saying, Hey, let's not skimp on the flights. I can't deal with Coach for that long. My mom, on her end, called me with lists of restaurants they had to try, her tone bubbling with excitement, as though the arrangements were already in motion. Every time I tried to push back, even a little, the manipulation came out in full force. When I told Sophia maybe she should budget better if she wanted to enjoy fancy vacations, she sighed dramatically and replied, Wow, after everything I did for you growing up, I was the one who covered for you when you stayed out late, who helped with chores so you could study. This is how you repay me. When I told Ethan he could at least pay for his own meals, he laughed and said, Man, I thought we were brothers. Guess I was wrong. And when I told Mom this wasn't fair to me, her voice dropped into that disappointed tone I'd known since childhood. Liam, don't be selfish. We're a family. Families don't nickel and dime each other. The more I resisted, the more they doubled down. At one point, Dad chimed in, telling me, "We sacrificed so much for you. Do you know how many weekends we gave up driving you to soccer games or sitting through your school plays? This is nothing compared to that. You should be grateful we gave you the life we did." That line hit harder than it should have. All those memories of them barely showing up for my graduations, of forgotten birthdays, of being told to figure it out when I asked for help, flashed through my mind. Yet now they were rewriting history, painting themselves as selfless providers whose sacrifices demanded repayment. And it didn't stop there. Soon, it wasn't just the vacation, it was everything. We went out for dinner one night at a casual Italian place, and when the bill came, everyone conveniently stared at their phones. Sophia slid the check toward me without even making eye contact, as if it was a given. When I hesitated, Dad raised his eyebrows and said, "Come on, you're not really going to make us split this, are you?" That'd be embarrassing. Another time, Mom needed a new dishwasher and hinted so heavily that I finally asked, "Are you expecting me to pay for that too?" She looked at me like I'd just insulted her and said, "Don't be ridiculous. It's just a small thing. You can afford it." Even extended family got pulled into the charade. At a barbecue, my aunt nudged me and said, "Heard you're treating everyone to a big trip. That's so generous of you." The look of pride on my mom's face as she confirmed it made my stomach twist. It was like they were using me as some kind of trophy, proof to relatives that their family was doing well. Even though it was entirely on my back, I started to notice the favoritism, too. Sophia and Ethan became emboldened, almost cocky. They joked about what they'd order on the trip, about how they'd live it up, while I played sugar daddy. They weren't shy about it, either, making comments right in front of me as if I were an ATM machine with ears. And my parents never once told them to knock it off. If anything, they encouraged it. Mom laughed at Ethan's jokes. Dad told Sophia she deserved to be pampered. Meanwhile, if I so much as sighed, I got sharp looks and reminders that I should be happy to give back. Inside, I was seething. I felt like every boundary I tried to set was being trampled. I'd worked years to stand on my own 2 feet, and now my own family was trying to drag me back down, dressing it up as togetherness and duty. Every phone call, every text about the vacation, added weight to my chest, a suffocating reminder that they saw me not as Liam, the person who had struggled, fought, and earned his way, but as Liam, the wallet. And yet, I stayed quiet. On the surface, I went along with it, nodding, offering vague non-answers, letting them believe I was caving. But behind that silence, something was shifting. With every guilt trip, every manipulative jab, I felt something harden inside me. I realized they weren't just taking advantage of me. They were counting on me never standing up for myself. And that realization, that was the beginning of the end for them. The tipping point came on a gray Saturday afternoon. I'd stopped by my parents' house, mostly because Mom had insisted she needed to talk to me in person. I walked in, already bracing myself for whatever new demand was waiting. Sure enough, the living room table was covered in travel brochures, sun-soaked beaches, glossy cruise ships, all neatly stacked like evidence in a case they were about to present. Mom smiled as though she'd been waiting for this moment. "Liam, perfect timing. We've narrowed it down. Cancun or the Bahamas. Both have packages for families. I think you should go ahead and book this week so we get the best rates." She said it so casually, like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. I opened my mouth to protest, but Sophia jumped in before I could. "Oh, and don't forget to book us all suites, not those cramped little rooms." Ethan snores, and I refused to deal with that. Ethan grinned and tossed a brochure my way. "Dude, check this one. Unlimited drinks included. That's a must." I sat there in disbelief. They weren't even pretending anymore. They had already decided everything, assuming I'd just fall in line. My silence, apparently, meant consent. But as bad as that was, what happened next shattered whatever thin thread of patience I still had. Dad cleared his throat, holding a piece of paper. "So, we took the liberty of putting the deposit on our credit card. Just $2,000 to lock in the rooms. We used your name, since the trip will be under your account anyway. Don't worry, you can pay it off when the bill comes." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Don't make a fuss. It was just easier this way. You'll be reimbursing us for the trip anyway. So what's the difference if we went ahead and put it down?" The agent said it was fully refundable if we cancel. My blood ran cold. They had used my name, my credit, without asking me. That wasn't just entitlement. That was crossing a legal line. I felt my stomach twist as I imagined my financial information being thrown around so recklessly. My credit score, something I'd worked years to build, suddenly felt like it was hanging by a thread because they couldn't wait for me to do my duty. Sophia leaned back with a smirk, clearly enjoying the look on my face. Relax, big brother. You're acting like this is some huge betrayal. It's not like we stole from you. You're just covering what you already promised. I never promised. I shot back, my voice low but shaking with anger. I never agreed to any of this. Ethan snorted. Oh, come on, man. Don't play dumb. We all know you're going to do it. You've been paying for everything else lately. Why not this too? You owe us. Don't forget who had your back when you were struggling. That line hit like a punch to the chest. Who had my back? I thought about the nights I worked double shifts in college, exhausted and broke while they spent weekends at parties. I thought about the birthdays they skipped because they were busy. I thought about begging for a ride once when my car broke down, only to be told to figure it out. And now they dared to stand there and rewrite history, claiming they had been my saviors. Something inside me cracked. For years, I had put up with their manipulation, their guilt trips, their casual dismissal of my boundaries. But this was something else. They had crossed into my financial life, making decisions in my name without permission. It was no longer just about money. It was about control. I stood up slowly, the brochures sliding off my lap and scattering across the floor. My mom frowned. Where are you going? We're not done planning. I looked at them at the smugness on Sophia's face, the smug confidence in Ethan's grin, the calm expectation in my parents' eyes. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel shame. I felt something sharper, colder, cleaner. Enjoy planning your vacation, I said, my voice steady. But don't count on me for anything. Their laughter followed me as I walked out the door, mocking, certain they didn't believe me for a second. And in that moment, I realized that was exactly their mistake. After I walked out of their house that day, I thought I'd feel relief. I expected some kind of weight to lift off my shoulders, like finally drawing a line in the sand would set me free. But instead, what I felt was an ache, a heaviness in my chest that followed me everywhere. For the next week, every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every email notification, every text, it all felt like a reminder that my family had crossed a line I never thought they'd cross. At first, I tried ignoring them. Mom sent long texts about family unity and how I needed to stop acting out. Sophia spammed me with screenshots of resorts and pool sidebars with captions like, "Can't wait," as if nothing had happened. Ethan kept it short, a single message that read, "Don't blow this up, man. It's not that deep." And Dad didn't text at all. But I got a voicemail one evening where he said, "Son, I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're making a fool of yourself. Don't ruin this for everyone." What broke me wasn't just the words. It was the certainty behind them. They didn't even think they'd done anything wrong. To them, I was the one being unreasonable, selfish even. And for a while, I wondered if maybe they were right. That old, familiar guilt dug its claws into me. Had I been too harsh? Was I overreacting? After all, it was just money, right? And wasn't I the one who had always been responsible? The one who could handle things? Those thoughts kept me up at night. I'd lie awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd had. I'd hear Sophia's laugh, Ethan's mocking tone, Mom's disappointed sigh. I'd picture Dad shaking his head at me like I was a child who had failed him. The anger came in waves, but between those waves, there was doubt. And in the silence of my apartment, that doubt was deafening. Then the practical fallout started. A letter arrived in the mail from the credit card company confirming the pending vacation charge. My heart sank as I realized they hadn't just put down a deposit, they'd actually booked it in my name without permission. Suddenly, it wasn't just about family drama anymore. It was about my financial reputation, my credit, my future. I called the company immediately, but the agent explained I'd need to dispute the charge formally, and in the meantime, it would show up on my account. I felt sick. That weekend, I went to visit an old friend, David. He's one of the few people I trust with everything. And when he asked how I was doing, I cracked. I told him everything: the brochures, the deposit, the manipulation. He sat there quietly for a long time, then said, "Liam, you've let them treat you like a bank for years. This was inevitable, but it doesn't mean you're stuck." I wanted to believe him, but in that moment, I felt stuck. My family had a way of making me feel like I owed them my entire existence, like everything I had was because of them. Walking away from that wasn't easy. It meant redefining who I was without their constant pull. It meant admitting that the people I thought I could trust the most were willing to use me without hesitation. Still, something in David's words stayed with me. It doesn't mean you're stuck. I started to think less about what I couldn't do and more about what I could. I began researching my rights, reading about financial fraud, about how to protect my accounts. I set up alerts on every card, changed my passwords, and even visited my bank to put extra protections in place. Quietly, I was building a wall between myself and their reach. On the surface, I played along. I didn't argue in the group text. I let them keep sending me their vacation updates. But inside, I was shifting. Every night, instead of lying awake in guilt, I sketched out plans in my head, plans not just to stop them, but to show them once and for all that I wasn't their safety net, their scapegoat, or their personal bank account. But to get there, I had to endure. I had to let them think they were winning, even as I quietly prepared for the moment that would change everything. In the months that followed, something inside me began to shift. For the first time in my life, I stopped reacting to my family's demands and started focusing entirely on myself. It was strange at first, almost like I was breaking some unwritten law of our household dynamic. I stopped answering every call immediately, stopped responding to every guilt-laden text. Instead, I poured that energy into my work, my friendships, and even small hobbies I'd neglected for years. And as it turned out, when I wasn't constantly drained by them, I had more to give to myself than I ever realized. At work, I'd already been on solid footing, but with my newfound focus, I started to thrive. Projects I once approached with caution, I now handled with confidence. I volunteered for responsibilities others avoided, and my boss noticed. Within 6 months, I was promoted along with a significant raise. It wasn't just the money that mattered, though. It was the validation. For once, I was being recognized for my abilities, not guilt for them. That raise allowed me to move into a better apartment, one with high ceilings and a balcony that overlooked the city lights. I furnished it the way I'd always wanted, clean, modern, a reflection of the independence I'd been craving. Standing in that apartment at night, with the skyline glowing in the distance, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I started building a circle outside of my family, too. David remained a constant, but I also reconnected with old college friends who'd always believed in me. We'd meet for drinks, go on weekend hikes, or just hang out and watch games. Slowly, I remembered what it felt like to laugh without a weight on my chest, to share stories without fear of being judged or used. But perhaps the most empowering change was financial. I got serious about my savings and investments. I spoke with a financial advisor, learned how to diversify, and started setting goals that had nothing to do with anyone else. Within a year, I had a safety net stronger than I'd ever imagined possible. For once, money wasn't something to stress over. It was a tool I controlled, not something my family drained. Meanwhile, my family's messages grew more frequent and desperate. Sophia complained about her bills piling up. Ethan hinted that his car might get repossessed. Mom wrote long texts about how we need to stick together in tough times, always with the unspoken expectation that I'd step in. Dad even left me another voicemail, this one tinged with irritation. Son, this silent treatment is childish. We're your family. Stop acting like a stranger. But their words no longer carried the same power over me. Each demand that once would have filled me with guilt now only steeled my resolve. I could feel the dynamic shifting, not just because I was saying no, but because I was thriving in spite of them. And deep down, I think they noticed. Then came the moment I hadn't expected. One evening, I ran into a former colleague at a networking event. We got to talking, and she introduced me to a small group of entrepreneurs working on a startup. At first, I just listened, curious about their energy and ideas. But the more they talked, the more I felt something stir inside me. By the end of the night, they'd invited me to join as an advisor. And within weeks, I was helping them refine their business model. The startup took off faster than any of us imagined. My role grew, my connections expanded, and soon I was standing in rooms I never thought I'd be in, meeting investors, pitching ideas, and making decisions that carried real weight. I wasn't just doing well anymore. I was becoming someone my family could never have imagined. Someone with influence, options, and power. Yet, through it all, I stayed quiet with them. I didn't brag. I didn't send updates. I let them keep their image of me as the reluctant provider, the ATM they thought they could manipulate back into submission. On the outside, I was the same Liam. But inside, I was building something much bigger. Because the truth was, I wasn't just planning to walk away anymore. I was preparing for the day when they'd push me one step too far, when their entitlement would blind them completely. And when that day came, I'd be ready not just to say no, but to show them exactly how wrong they had been about me all along. The setup came almost by accident. By this point, I was deeply involved with the startup, and we had just secured a major partnership with a travel and hospitality company. It wasn't my area directly, but I had access to plenty of insider knowledge, corporate discounts, exclusive booking systems, and, most importantly, detailed insights into how vacation packages were managed. At first, it was just an interesting perk. But as soon as I saw another group text from my family, Liam, don't forget to finalize the resort by the end of the month, the connection clicked in my mind. Suddenly, I realized I had the exact tools I needed not just to protect myself, but to turn the tables. The irony was almost too perfect. The very industry they were trying to exploit me through was now one of the keys to my professional success. Around that same time, I also learned something else that shifted the balance. Through a mutual acquaintance, I found out that Sophia had been bragging to friends about finally getting what she deserved from me. She'd apparently been telling people the trip was her idea, and that I had finally stepped up like a real brother should. Ethan, meanwhile, had been bragging at his workplace that his big-shot brother was covering everything, framing it as though he had convinced me to do it. And my parents? They had apparently told several relatives I was taking care of them now, as though my life was some long-delayed repayment plan for their sacrifices. It was infuriating, but it was also clarifying. For the first time, I saw their entitlement not as isolated moments, but as a story they had crafted, a narrative where I was cast as their provider, their golden goose. They weren't just using me privately anymore. They were publicly claiming my success as theirs. That, more than anything, made me certain that my silence couldn't last forever. So, I started preparing quietly. I met with my financial advisor to lock down protections on all my accounts, even creating separate channels so that no one could access my credit without multiple layers of approval. I worked with the bank to flag any suspicious charges. I combed through every piece of my financial footprint and sealed every gap they might exploit. If they thought they could casually toss my name onto another expense, they were in for a rude awakening. But the real preparation went deeper. I started collecting evidence. Every text, every email, every voicemail. I saved copies of the deposit they placed in my name, the travel confirmations that linked back to my credit card. I organized it all neatly, like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled, because I knew, one way or another, this would come to a head. And then, almost as though fate was nudging me along, an opportunity presented itself. At a networking event for the hospitality company, I met one of their senior managers. We got to talking, and when I mentioned casually that I had family who loved to test the boundaries of booking systems, she laughed knowingly and shared stories of customers who try to game the system. Then she said something that stuck with me. You'd be amazed how quickly arrogance turns into regret when the paperwork catches up to them. That sentence echoed in my mind for days. Arrogance turning into regret. It was exactly the arc my family was on, and I now had the tools to make sure it landed exactly where it needed to. By the time summer rolled around, I wasn't just ready, I was positioned. I had the means to protect myself, the evidence to expose them, and the insider knowledge to turn their little vacation into something unforgettable. All I had to do was wait for the moment they pushed me too far, the moment they stopped asking and tried to force my hand again. And when that moment came, I already knew their laughter would be the last thing they'd expect to lose. The breaking point arrived in the form of a phone call. One late afternoon, I was in my office wrapping up emails when my phone lit up with Mom's name. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something in me said to pick up. Her voice was syrupy sweet at first. Liam, honey, I hope you've had a good day. We just wanted to check in about the vacation. The balance is due next week, and since you've been so quiet, I thought maybe you forgot. I didn't answer right away. I just let her keep talking, listening as she rattled off numbers, dates, and instructions like I was her personal assistant. Then, with a slight edge in her tone, she added, "We've already told the extended family we're going. It would be embarrassing if you backed out now." There it was. Not just entitlement, but a threat cloaked in family pride. She wasn't asking anymore. She was cornering me. That night, I got the group text. Sophia chimed in with a winking emoji. "Make sure my suite has a balcony view." Ethan followed with, "And don't forget the drinks package, bro. This trip is going to be legendary." Dad sealed it with, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just get it done." They had no idea what I'd been preparing. I waited a day, letting them stew in silence, then sent a calm reply. Got it. I'll handle everything. Immediately, the responses poured in, smiling emojis, thanks, little digs about me, finally coming around. What they didn't realize was that my definition of handle everything wasn't what they thought. Using the corporate connections I'd built through the startup, I made a few calls. It wasn't hard to get in touch with the resort they had picked. After all, they had already booked it under my name. I explained the situation, showed proof of the unauthorized charge, and requested the reservation be canceled and flagged for fraud. Not only was the booking wiped clean, but I also ensured that my name and theirs were blacklisted from making any future reservations without direct authorization. The resort was professional about it, but I could hear the faint amusement in the manager's voice. Clearly, this wasn't the first time she'd seen a family drama spill into her office. But I wasn't finished. With all the evidence I'd collected, the deposit charge, the texts, the voicemails, I filed a formal dispute with my credit card company. Within days, the pending charges were reversed and my account was secure. To make it airtight, I also reported the unauthorized use of my information, which triggered a fraud alert on any future attempts to use my credit without verification. In short, their dream vacation had been wiped clean, and they couldn't use my name to resurrect it. The best part, though, came when they showed up at the airport. Yes, the airport. They had actually gone ahead and packed their bags, parading through the terminal like royalty about to embark on their grand getaway. I know this because Sophia, ever the social media addict, had been posting selfies all morning, her designer sunglasses, Ethan with his airport beer, Mom and Dad smiling with their carry-ons. They were so sure of themselves, so confident that I had caved. Then, radio silence. Hours later, I got the frantic messages. Liam, the tickets aren't working. Why are they saying the reservation was canceled? This isn't funny. Fix it right now. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? We're standing here like idiots. I didn't reply. I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city glow beneath me, and let their panic unfold in real time. Sophia posted a story of herself at the airport, face red with frustration, captioned, "When your own brother screws you over." Ethan's tone was angrier. Unbelievable. Never trusting Liam again. Mom called me twice, then 3 times, then left a voicemail that started calm but ended with, "You've ruined this family." Dad, of course, tried the stern approach. "This is your last chance to fix this. Do the right thing." But I wasn't shaken. For the first time in my life, I held all the cards. They couldn't guilt me, couldn't manipulate me, couldn't rewrite the story. Because the story wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. And as I watched the messages pile up, I realized something. Revenge didn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes the sweetest revenge was calm, precise, and undeniable. The vacation they thought would be their triumph had turned into their humiliation, and they had done it all to themselves. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the time my family returned home from the airport, dragging their suitcases and their bruised pride, the story had already spread. Sophia's posts, once smug previews of her luxury vacation, had turned into rants about betrayal. But the internet is cruel, and her followers were quick to point out the holes in her narrative. "Wait, you expected your brother to pay for everything," one person commented. "Sounds like entitlement, not betrayal." Another wrote, "Imagine mooching off your own sibling and then crying when it backfires." The backlash was immediate, and for someone who lived off attention, Sophia's reputation took a hit she couldn't spin away. Ethan fared no better. At work, his coworkers had apparently grown tired of his bragging. When they found out he never even made it past security, the teasing started, and it didn't stop. "How was your free trip, Ethan?" became a running joke in the office. His boss even pulled him aside, telling him to focus on his responsibilities at work instead of chasing handouts. He stopped texting me after that. Mom and Dad, though, took the hardest blow. Relatives they had bragged to about how I was taking care of them, about how generous I supposedly was, started calling, asking what had really happened. When the truth came out, their credibility collapsed. The proud image they'd built of themselves as the glue of the family shattered, replaced with whispers about manipulation, greed, and humiliation at the airport. And financially, the cherry on top was that with the fraud alert in place, their attempt to rebook fees time under my name again triggered a flag. They got a letter from the bank warning of potential legal consequences for misusing someone else's information. They didn't tell me directly, but Dad's voicemail, heavy with restrained panic, made it obvious. Liam, we need to talk. Things have gotten complicated. For weeks afterward, the calls kept coming, first angry, then pleading, then quiet and desperate. But I didn't budge. Every time my phone buzzed with their names, I was reminded of the years of guilt, of being treated like a wallet instead of a son or a brother. And every time, I chose silence. It wasn't easy. Part of me still ached for what could have been, a family built on love, not obligation. But I knew I couldn't go back. Not after the lies, the entitlement, the betrayal. Months later, I ran into my aunt at the grocery store. She gave me a sympathetic smile and said softly, "You know, your parents are still upset. They say you abandoned them." I looked at her for a moment, then replied, "No, I didn't abandon them. I stopped letting them use me." And that was the truth. That night, I sat once again on my balcony, the city buzzing below, and felt a calm settle over me. For the first time, I wasn't defined by their expectations or their manipulations. I was free. Their vacation turned into humiliation, their laughter into silence, their control into dust. And as I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but think, sometimes the most powerful word you can say, the one that changes everything, is simply no.